Morena, everyone. Welcome to Tawa School Story Time for, what's it? Today's the 22nd. Is it the 22nd? Let me check my watch. It is the 22nd of April. Hey, great that you can join me today. And today we're going to be reading Willy the Champ by another Anthony Browne book. I read Willy the Wimp yesterday, and you can check that on yesterday's story time. And then we're going to continue on with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And this current chapter is The Miracle. All right, so we're going to start with Willy the Champ. Love the Willy stories. So Willy didn't seem to be good at anything. He liked to read and listen to music and walk in the park with his friend Millie. Willy wasn't any good at soccer. He did try. Willy tried bike racing. He really did try. Sometimes Willy walked to the pool. Other times he went to the cinema with Millie. But it was always the same. Nearly everyone laughed at him, no matter what he did. One day, Willy was standing on the corner with the boys when a horrible figure appeared. It was Buster Nose, and he had a horrible figure. The boys fled. Buster threw a vicious punch. Willy ducked. Then he stood up. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Willy. "Are you all right?" Buster went home to his mum. Willy was the champ. You can see he's floating on air. I think he feels pretty good about himself. Tomorrow we're going to read another Willy story, and this one is called Willy the Wizard, and it's a really cool story. All right, we're going to carry on with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Miracle. Charlie entered the shop and laid the damp 50-cent piece on the counter. "One Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight," he said, remembering how much he had loved the one he'd had on his birthday. The man behind the counter looked fat and well-fed. He had big lips and fat cheeks and a very fat neck. The fat around his neck bulged all around the top of his collar like a rubber ring. He turned and reached behind him for the chocolate bar. Then he turned back again and handed it to Charlie. Charlie grabbed it and quickly tore off the wrapper and took an enormous bite. Then he took another, and oh, the joy of being able to cram large pieces of something sweet and solid into his mouth. The sheer blissful joy of being able to fill one's mouth with rich, solid food. "You look like you wanted one, Sonny," the shopkeeper said pleasantly. Charlie nodded, his mouth bulging with chocolate. The shopkeeper put Charlie's change on the counter. "Take it easy," he said. "It'll give you a tummy ache if you swallow it like that without chewing." Charlie went on wolfing the chocolate. He couldn't stop, and in less than half a minute, the whole thing had disappeared down his throat. He was quite out of breath, but he felt marvelously, extraordinarily happy. He reached out a hand to take the change. Then he paused. His eyes were just above the level of the counter. They were staring at the silver coins lying there. The coins were all 5-cent pieces. There were 9 of them altogether. Surely it wouldn't matter if he spent just one more. "I think," he said quite quietly, "I think I'll just have one more of those chocolate bars. The same kind as before, please." "Why not?" the fat shopkeeper said, reaching behind him and taking another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper, when suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still. "It's a golden ticket!" screamed the shopkeeper, leaping about a foot in the air. "You've got a golden ticket! You've found the last golden ticket! Hey, would you believe it? Come on, look at this, everybody! The kid's found Wonka's last golden ticket! There it is! It's right here in his hands!" It seemed as though the shopkeeper might be going to have a fit. "In my shop too!" he yelled. "He found it right here in my own little shop! Somebody call the newspaper, quick! Let them know! Watch out now, Sonny! Don't tear it or when you unwrap it! That thing's precious!" In a few seconds, there was a crowd of about 20 people clustering around Charlie, and many more were pushing their way in from the street. Everybody wanted to get a look at the golden ticket and at the lucky finder. "Where is it?" somebody shouted. "Hold it up so we can all see it." There it is," someone else shouted. "He's holding it in his hand. See the gold shining." "How did he manage to find it? I'd like to know," a large boy shouted angrily. 20 bars a day I've been buying for weeks and weeks." "Think of all the free stuff he'll be getting too," another boy said enviously. "A lifetime supply." "He'll need it, the skinny little shrimp," a girl said, laughing. Charlie hadn't moved. He hadn't even unwrapped the golden ticket from around the chocolate. He was standing very still, holding it tightly with both hands while the crowd pushed and shouted all around him. He felt quite dizzy. There was a peculiar floating sensation coming over him, as though he were floating up in the air like a balloon. His feet couldn't seem to be touching the ground at all. He could hear his heart thumping loudly somewhere in his throat. At that point, he became aware of a hand resting lightly upon his shoulder, and then he looked up. He saw a tall man standing over him. "Listen," the man whispered. "I'll buy it from you. I'll give you £50. How about that, eh? I'll give you a new bicycle as well, okay?" "Are you crazy?" shouted a woman who was standing equally close. "Why, I'd give him £200 for that ticket. You want to sell the ticket for £200, young man?" "That's quite enough of that," the shopkeeper shouted, pushing his way through the crowd and taking Charlie firmly by the arm. "Leave the kid alone, will you? Make way here. Let him out." And to Charlie, as he led him to the door, he whispered, "Don't let anybody have it. Take it straight home quickly before you lose it. Run all the way and don't stop till you get there. You understand?" Charlie nodded. "You know something?" the fat shopkeeper said, pausing a moment and smiling at Charlie. "I have a feeling you need a break like this. I'm awfully glad you got it. Good luck to you, Sonny." "Thank you," Charlie said, and off he went running through the snow as fast as his legs would go. And as he flew past Mr. Willy Wonka's factory, he turned and waved at it and sang out, "I'll be seeing you! I'll be seeing you soon!" And 5 minutes later, he arrived at his own home. Chapter 12. What it said on the golden ticket. Charlie burst through the front door, shouting, "Mother! Mother! Mother!" Mrs. Bucket was in the old grandparents' room serving them their evening soup. "Mother!" yelled Charlie, rushing in on them like a hurricane. "Look, I've got it! Look, Mother, I've got it! The last golden ticket! It's mine! I found some money in the street and I bought 2 bars of chocolate and the second one had the golden ticket, and there were crowds of people all around me wanting to see it, and the shopkeeper rescued me and I ran all the way home. And here I am. It's the 5th golden ticket. I found it." Mrs. Bucket simply stood and stared while the 4 old grandparents, who were sitting up in bed, balancing bowls of soup on their laps, all dropped their spoons with a clatter and froze against their pillows. For about 10 seconds, there was absolute silence in the room. Nobody dared to speak or move. It was a magic moment. Then very softly, Grandpa Joe said, "Ah, you're pulling our legs, Charlie, aren't you? You're having a little joke." "I'm not," cried Charlie, rushing up to the bed and holding out the large and beautiful golden ticket for him to see. Grandpa Joe leaned forward, took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket. The others watched him, waiting for the verdict. Then very slowly, a marvelous grin spreading all over his face, Grandpa Joe lifted his head and looked straight at Charlie. The color was rushing to his cheeks, and his eyes were wide open, shining with joy, and in the center of each eye, right in the very center, in the black pupil, a little spark of wild excitement was slowly dancing. And then the old man took a deep breath, and suddenly, with no warning whatsoever, an explosion seemed to take place inside him. He threw up his arms and yelled, "Yippee!" And at the same time, his long, bony body rose up out of the bed, and his bowl of soup went flying into the face of Grandma Josephine in one fantastic leap. This old fellow of 96 and a half, who hadn't been out of bed for these last 20 years, jumped onto the floor and started doing a dance of victory in his pajamas. Yippee! Shout 3 cheers for Charlie! Hip hip hooray! At this point, the door opened and Mr. Bucket walked into the room. He was cold and tired, and he looked at it. And he looked at all day long. He had been shoveling snow in the streets. Cripes! He cried. What's going on in here? It didn't take them long to tell him what had happened. I don't believe it, he said. It's not possible. Show him the ticket, Charlie, shouted Grandpa Joe, who was dancing around the room like a dervish in his striped pajamas. Show your father the fifth and last golden ticket in the world. Let me see it, Charlie, Mr. Bucket said, collapsing into a chair, holding out his hand. Charlie came forward with the precious document. It was a very beautiful thing, this golden ticket, having been made, so it seemed, from a sheet of pure gold, hammered out almost to the thinness of paper. One side of it, printed by some clever method in jet black letters, was the invitation itself from Mr. Wonka. Read it aloud, said Grandpa Joe, climbing back into bed at last. Let's all hear exactly what it says. Mr. Bucket held the lovely golden ticket up close to his eyes. His hands were trembling slightly, and he seemed to be overcome by the whole business. He took several deep breaths. Then he cleared his throat and said, All right, I'll read it. Here we go. Greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket from Mr. Willy Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for one whole day. You and all others who are lucky enough to find a golden ticket. I, Willy Wonka, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything that there is to see. And afterwards, when it is time to leave, you'll be escorted home by a procession of large trucks. These trucks, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious eatables to last you and your entire household for many years. If at any time thereafter you should run out of supplies, you've only have to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket, and I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you'll be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting things that will happen on the day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you, and for all my beloved golden ticket holders, mystic and marvelous surprises that will entrance, delight, intrigue, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things would happen to you. Just wait and see. And now, here are your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day in the month of February. On this day, and on no other, you must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late. And you are allowed to bring with you either one or two members of your own family to look after you and to ensure that you don't get into mischief. One more thing. Be certain to have this ticket with you. Otherwise, you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. The first day of February, cried Mrs. Bucket. But that's tomorrow. Today is the last day of January. I know it is. Cripes, said Mr. Bucket. I think you're right. Oh, you're just in time, shouted Grandpa Joe. There's not a moment to lose. We must start making preparations at once. Wash your face, comb your hair, scrub your hands, brush your teeth, blow your nose, cut your nails, polish your shoes, iron your shirt, for heaven's sake. Get all the mud off your pants. We must get ready, boy. We must be ready for the biggest day of your life. Now, don't overexcite yourself, Grandpa, Mrs. Bucket said, and don't fluster poor Charlie. We must all try and stay very calm. Now, the first thing to decide is this. Who will go to Charlie? Who could go with Charlie to the factory? I will, shouted Grandpa Joe, leaping out of bed once again. I'll take him. I'll look after him. You leave it to me. Mrs. Bucket smiled at the old man. Then she turned to her husband and said, How about you, dear? Don't you think you should go? Well, Mr. Bucket said, pausing to think about it. No, I'm not so sure I should. But you must. There's no must about it, my dear, Mr. Bucket said gently. Mind you, I'd love to go. It'll be tremendously exciting. But on the other hand, I believe that the person who really deserves to go most of all is Grandpa Joe himself. He seems to know more about it than we do, provided, of course, that he feels well enough. Yippee! Shouted Grandpa Joe, seizing Charlie by the hands and dancing round the room. He certainly seems well enough, Mrs. Bucket said, laughing. Yes, perhaps you're right after all. Perhaps Grandpa Joe should be the one to go with him. I certainly can't go myself and leave the other three old people all alone in bed for a whole day. Hallelujah! Yelled Grandpa Joe. Praise the Lord! At that point, there came a loud knock on the front door. Mr. Bucket went on to open it, and next moment, swarms of newspapermen and photographers were pouring into the house. They had tracked down the finder of the fifth golden ticket, and now they all wanted to get the full story for the front pages of the morning papers. For several hours, there was complete pandemonium in the little house, and it must have been nearly midnight before Mr. Bucket was able to get rid of them so that Charlie could go to bed. Chapter 13 is the big day arrives, and we will continue with that tomorrow. Have a great day today, guys. Enjoy your learning from home, and we will catch up with you all tomorrow. All right. Ka kite anō.